Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into the world of mindfulness today.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and specifically, how it can help us better understand and manage our emotions.
Okay.
Our source material for this deep dive is a bit different this time.
What is it?
It's uh it's actually audio excerpts from a guided mindfulness audiobook.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we'll hear some personal stories and some practical exercises from the audiobook,
Okay.
and also hear some expert commentary.
Mm-hmm.
Uh all kind of pointing to this fascinating idea that emotions aren't enemies,
Okay.
but they're more like messengers with valuable insights for us.
That's really interesting. Most of us are kind of conditioned to just label emotions as good or bad.
Yeah,
And then we end up struggling with the ones we'd rather not experience.
exactly. And you know what? Right off the bat, the audiobook introduces this exercise called breathing with the earth.
Okay.
The focus is on feeling grounded and supported,
Mm-hmm.
really trusting our bodily sensations and learning to release any negative thoughts. You basically visualize yourself sinking into the earth with each exhale,
Oh, wow.
like dropping several miles deeper each time.
I've tried grounding techniques like that before.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty fascinating how such a simple visualization can really shift your mental state.
Yeah.
I'm curious though. The exercise asks, what does the earth feel like beneath you?
Oh, I see.
Do you think it's prompting us to connect more deeply with the physical sensations?
Right.
Not just the idea of being grounded, but actually feeling it.
That's a great point. It's like the difference between just thinking about an apple
Yeah,
and actually taking a bite.
totally.
They're completely different experiences.
For sure.
And speaking of the body, the audiobook really emphasizes how much wisdom our bodies hold,
Mm,
something we often overlook in this fast-paced, reason-focused world.
yeah, I agree.
There's this compelling story about a woman named Sabine
Okay.
that really illustrates this.
What happened?
So Sabine was diagnosed with a thyroid condition and told she needed surgery.
Oh, wow.
But she had this strong feeling that something wasn't quite right.
Okay.
She's an artist, and she intuitively drew this picture of her neck and thyroid.
Interesting.
And she marked this small red dot on a specific spot.
Huh.
She's trusting her intuition, expressing it visually.
What happened?
Well, further tests revealed a small issue on her thyroid
Okay.
in the exact spot where she had marked that red dot.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was a minor issue that didn't require immediate surgery.
Okay,
And Sabine was actually able to have a healthy pregnancy and become a mother,
that's great.
which was a huge priority for her.
Mm-hmm.
Years later, her body did signal a real problem requiring surgery.
Oh, wow.
But because she listened to her body initially,
Right.
she had already experienced years of vibrant health and motherhood.
That's such a powerful story. It underscores that we really are the experts on our own bodies. We can learn to trust those inner signals and advocate for ourselves, especially in healthcare settings.
I know there have been times I haven't spoken up when maybe I should have.
I think that resonates with a lot of people. It's a reminder to not just think about our bodies,
Right.
but to truly listen to them.
Absolutely. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about befriending emotions.
Okay.
The audiobook really advocates for embracing all our emotions, even the ones we tend to label as negative.
Interesting.
It's about seeing them as valuable sources of information, not problems to be solved.
It's a pretty big shift in perspective for a lot of us.
Yeah, I agree. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think most of us spend a lot of energy trying to avoid or suppress uncomfortable emotions.
Yeah, it's easier that way, right?
Right. But what if those emotions are trying to tell us something important?
That's a good question.
You know what this reminds me of?
Yeah.
The story about my son struggling with test anxiety late one night.
Oh, yeah, I remember you telling me about that.
He was convinced he had forgotten a crucial piece of information.
Was he really freaking out?
He was in full panic mode. And I admit, I started to panic a little too.
Oh, no.
But then I remembered some of these mindfulness techniques,
Right.
and I guided him through a calming breathing exercise.
Did it help?
Yeah, something amazing happened.
He remembered the information.
He did. And what's even more fascinating is that he smiled afterwards.
Wow.
It was like a huge weight had been lifted.
That's so great to hear.
This seemingly small moment really highlighted how mindfulness can impact our ability to regulate emotions,
Yeah.
even in those high-stress situations.
That's a perfect example of how these practices aren't just theoretical.
Right.
They have real-world applications.
For sure.
And it ties in nicely with brain science.
Oh, how so?
Mindfulness can help regulate the amygdala,
Mm-hmm.
which is our brain's emotional center.
Okay.
By practicing mindfulness,
Yeah.
we're basically training our brains to respond to challenges in a calmer,
Yeah.
more balanced way.
Yeah.
It's like building emotional resilience.
Absolutely. And small, consistent practices can add up to big changes over time.
That's encouraging to hear.
The audiobook then introduces this exercise called Scan for Emotions, which I found really interesting.
Scan for emotions. I'm curious about that one.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of it? I'm not familiar with that.
It's all about fine-tuning our awareness of our emotional landscape
Okay.
and, differentiating between physical sensations and actual emotions.
So you're not just naming the emotion,
No.
but going deeper.
Right. And then you explore the intensity of those emotions.
Okay.
You consider any stories or narratives you might be attaching to them.
Oh, interesting.
And there's actually another layer to it.
Oh.
The audiobook talks about foreground and background emotions.
Foreground and background. Okay, I'm
Now,
listening.
foreground emotions are those that are immediately apparent, while the background emotions might be lurking beneath the surface.
Oh, I see.
It's like peeling back the layers to understand what's really going on.
So it's a tool for uncovering those hidden complexities of our emotional experience.
Exactly.
Do you think journaling could be a good way to process those insights?
Absolutely. Writing things down can solidify those aha moments,
Yeah.
make the insights more concrete and actionable.
The audiobook then dives into how societal and familial norms
Mm-hmm.
can impact how we express emotions
Right.
using some incredibly personal stories.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, one that stood out to me was Paul's struggle to connect with his son on an emotional level.
Oh, what happened with Paul?
So Paul was raised in an environment where showing emotions, especially anything seen as weakness, was discouraged.
Oh, wow.
And this created a barrier between him and his son, who was acting out to get his emotional needs met.
That's heartbreaking. It's like those unspoken rules about emotions.
Yeah.
They can really create distance in relationships.
Absolutely. It makes you think about the long-term effects of these unwritten rules.
Right.
I mean, emotions are a natural part of who we are.
Or sure.
Repressing them often leads to unhealthy coping mechanisms,
Absolutely.
which can impact relationships in all areas of life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, do you think Paul's story
Mm-hmm.
is more common than we realize?
It's a question worth pondering, for sure.
Are there many people out there struggling to acknowledge and express their emotions authentically
Right.
because of how they were raised?
I think so, yeah. And it leads us to another story that really resonated with me, the story of Gail. So Gail, she used sarcasm kind of like a shield,
Oh, I see.
to protect her vulnerability.
Okay.
And it really prevented her from forming close, intimate connections.
I think a lot of people can relate to that, using humor or sarcasm to deflect from deeper emotions.
Yeah, for sure.
What was Gail's journey like?
Well, the audiobook describes this process of self-discovery for her.
Okay.
And Gail realized that fear and shame were fueling her sarcastic facade.
Hmm.
That was a turning point for her.
Sound like
She started pausing before reacting, identifying her true emotions, and then choosing a more authentic way to respond.
that takes a lot of courage. It reminds me of that saying, vulnerability is the birthplace of connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hiding behind a mask might feel safe, but it really prevents us from experiencing true intimacy.
It really does. And her story is a good reminder to examine our own patterns, too.
Right.
What emotions are we hiding behind,
Yeah.
What masks are we wearing that prevent us from connecting with others authentically?
Those are great questions for all of us to consider.
Yeah.
So the audiobook then walks listeners through an exercise, a practical exercise for accepting and releasing emotions.
Oh, okay.
What makes this exercise stand out to you?
Well, it highlights this idea that we don't need to push emotions away.
Okay.
Instead, we can actually learn to befriend them.
Even the difficult ones.
Yeah, even the difficult ones.
So it's about shifting our relationship with emotions, seeing them as temporary visitors, not permanent residents.
Exactly. And the exercise starts with grounding yourself and then naming the emotion you want to work with.
Okay.
And it suggests starting with like a safe emotion or memory.
So easing into the practice, starting with something manageable.
Right, exactly. Then you explore where you feel the emotion in your body. What sensations are present. You really tune into the physical manifestation of that emotion.
So you're not just thinking about it, you're feeling it.
Right, exactly. And then the final step involves visualizing the release of the emotion,
Oh.
like watching a leaf float down a stream.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, it creates a sense of spaciousness and freedom, recognizing that, we are not our emotions.
Yeah,
We have emotions.
I like that distinction. Then we're introduced to Trevor's story.
Okay.
His journey with addiction, betrayal, and anger. Oh, it really resonated with me.
Hmm.
He carried so much pain from the past.
His story is a powerful example of how past experiences, especially traumatic ones, can create this emotional baggage that weighs us down.
Yeah.
And it happens long after the original situation has passed, you know?
Mm.
Trevor, he held on to this intense anger towards a friend who had betrayed him,
Okay.
but later he discovered that his friend had actually died years ago.
Oh, wow. So he was carrying a ghost of anger for absolutely no reason.
It's true, and that image, a ghost of anger, it's so haunting,
It
yet
is.
so relatable, right?
It is.
We can get trapped in these cycles of negativity, reliving past hurts without even realizing it's happening.
It's so true. It makes you wonder, what ghosts are we holding on to?
Yeah,
Are there emotions from the past that are no longer serving us,
right.
yet we haven't fully processed or released them?
It can be so challenging to let go,
Mm.
but holding on really perpetuates that cycle of suffering.
Absolutely. Trevor's story is a reminder that healing is possible,
Mm.
but it requires a willingness to face those ghosts and begin to let them go.
And you know, this leads us back to the core message of the audiobook. Emotions are allies, not enemies. It emphasizes that all emotions, even the ones we label as negative, like anger, sadness, or fear,
Right.
they all have a purpose.
I love that. It reminds me of that anecdote about teaching third graders to cool it, chill it, breathe it, then speak it.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
It's amazing how even young children can learn to manage their emotional responses using mindfulness techniques.
It's a beautiful example of how these skills are not just for adults, right?
Nah.
It's never too early to learn how to regulate emotions
Mm.
and respond rather than react.
I also love the idea that every emotion has a message.
Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes it takes a little digging to uncover that message,
Love
but
it.
it's always there. And the audiobook spends some time unpacking specific emotions,
Okay.
starting with shame.
Okay.
It describes shame as the feeling of being inherently flawed and unworthy.
Shame is a powerful emotion. It can lead to feelings of isolation and worthlessness.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we tend to want to hide or deny shame.
Oh, yeah, it's much easier to just push it away.
Right, but that only makes it stronger.
That's interesting.
The story of Kathleen, who was shamed for eating a cookie as a child, really illustrates how deeply shame can impact us.
A seemingly small incident can trigger these feelings of unworthiness
Yeah.
that we carry with us into adulthood.
It's true. And her story really resonated with me because I think we all have those experiences
Right.
where we felt shamed, whether for something we did
Right.
or simply for who we are.
Right.
And the audiobook suggests a practice of meeting shame head on.
So facing it directly instead of trying to avoid it.
Exactly. Acknowledging it, exploring its message, and bringing it out into the light.
I see.
When we try to ignore or suppress shame, it just festers and grows stronger.
Okay.
But when we bring it into our conscious awareness, we can begin to dismantle its power.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, what we resist persists. The next emotion the audiobook tackles is anger. It shares the story of Buddha and the angry nobleman, which highlights the potential energy of anger.
Yeah, the story emphasizes that anger itself isn't necessarily the problem.
Okay.
It's how we choose to express it.
So true.
You know, it can be a powerful motivator for change, but it's crucial to separate it from aggressive or harmful actions.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's not about suppressing the anger. It's about channeling it in a constructive way.
Right. And the audiobook suggests some helpful questions to ask ourselves in moments of anger.
Oh, like what?
Things like, what's the truth behind this anger? Or what would it say if it could speak?
So it's about getting to the root of it rather than just reacting.
Right, exactly. It's about moving from reactive anger to responsive anger.
I like that. And then, of course, we have sadness and grief.
Yeah.
Emotions that a lot of people, I think, try to avoid.
Our culture often equates sadness with weakness.
Yeah,
So we're conditioned to push it away or distract ourselves from it.
that makes sense. But the audiobook encourages a different approach, right?
Exactly. It talks about using mindfulness to sit with the sadness and grief,
Okay.
allowing them to run their course without judgment.
So sadness and grief are natural parts of the human experience.
They are. And trying to avoid them only prolongs the healing process.
Right.
It's about recognizing that these emotions have a purpose. And allowing ourselves to feel them fully is essential for growth.
The audiobook also encourages us to explore the physical sensations of sadness and grief.
Yeah.
Where do we feel it in our bodies? What are those sensations? It's about creating a safe and compassionate space for these emotions to exist without resistance.
That's a beautiful way to approach those often difficult emotions.
Finally, the audiobook discusses fear and anxiety.
Okay.
And it makes this distinction between fear, which is a response to a known threat,
Right.
and anxiety, which is more vague and future-oriented.
That teaching story about the woman fleeing from a paper tiger, that was a good one.
Oh, yeah. What did you find insightful about that one?
Well, it highlights how fear and anxiety are often based on past interpretations and imagined scenarios
Yeah.
rather than present reality.
So our minds can create more fear than is actually warranted.
I think we all fall into that trap.
Yeah, definitely. So what does the audiobook suggest we do about fear and anxiety?
It encourages this practice of gently acknowledging them,
Okay.
exploring their physical manifestations, and reminding ourselves that we are safe in the present moment.
So grounding ourselves in the here and now, rather than getting swept away by the what-ifs.
Exactly. Do you think there's a connection between the practice of non-attachment and dealing with fear and anxiety?
I think so. Non-attachment is about recognizing that everything is impermanent,
Right.
including our thoughts and emotions. When we cling to things, especially those things we're afraid of losing,
Right.
it creates suffering.
So learning to let go, to detach from those fears and anxieties can be a powerful antidote.
I like that. And it doesn't mean that we ignore or deny our fears and anxieties.
Oh, not at all.
It's about recognizing that they are a part of the human experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And learning to relate to them in a more balanced and empowered way.
The audiobook really emphasizes the importance of self-compassion throughout this process.
Self-compassion, what does that mean exactly?
It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a dear friend.
Okay.
You know, we all make mistakes. We all have moments of imperfection. We're all doing the best we can with the resources we have.
It's such a simple message, but it can be so difficult to put into practice.
I think it's a practice that requires ongoing awareness and effort, but the rewards are definitely worth it.
The audiobook goes on to explore this idea of interconnectedness.
Recognizing that we're not isolated individuals,
Right.
but rather part of this vast web of life.
Mm-hmm.
Our thoughts and actions, they have an impact on the world around us,
Right.
and the well-being of others is inextricably linked to our own well-being.
It shifts our focus from me to we. Encourages us to cultivate compassion and loving kindness toward all beings.
That's a beautiful reminder that we're all in this together.
It is.
Hmm.
And finally, the audiobook concludes with a powerful call to action.
It invites us to integrate mindfulness into our daily lives.
So to make it more than just a concept,
Right, but a way of being.
embodied mindfulness,
Yeah.
living these principles in our thoughts, words, and actions.
Absolutely. The audiobook offers some practical tips for incorporating mindfulness into everyday activities.
Oh, like what?
Like eating, walking, even doing the dishes.
It's about bringing awareness and presence to each moment, no matter how mundane it may seem.
I appreciate that the audiobook emphasizes that mindfulness isn't about achieving some state of perfection.
Yeah, I agree.
It's about showing up with curiosity and compassion,
Mhm.
moment after moment, embracing the messiness and imperfections of life.
Because even in those imperfections, there's beauty and wisdom to be found.
Absolutely.
The audiobook leaves us with this profound sense of hope and possibility. It reminds us that we have the power to create a more mindful and compassionate world.
Both within ourselves and in the world around us.
It's been such a rich and insightful exploration.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have delved into these concepts with you. What are your final thoughts as we wrap up this deep dive? It feels like we've only just scratched the surface. This audiobook has offered so much to consider. What stands out to you as a key takeaway from all these stories and exercises?
You know what's really stuck with me?
Yeah.
It's that recurring theme of recognizing emotions as messengers,
Oh, yeah.
not monsters.
Right.
It's so easy to get caught in that trap of labeling emotions as, like, good or bad.
Definitely.
And then we try to cling to the good ones and push away the bad ones.
It's so true.
But what if we just approach them all with a sense of curiosity?
Okay.
What if they're all valuable sources of information for us?
I love that. Instead of resisting those difficult emotions or suppressing them, what if we just create space for them? Allow ourselves to actually feel them.
I think that's where the real transformation happens.
Yeah.
It's like, trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
Okay.
Eventually, it's going to pop back up
Right.
with even more force.
It'll come back to get you.
But if we just let go, allow that beach ball to float freely,
Mm-hmm.
it loses its power to control us.
It's a great analogy. So we're not trying to get rid of emotions. We're just changing how we relate to them.
Exactly.
We're learning to ride the waves instead of getting swept away.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
What about the specific exercises from the audiobook? Which ones resonated with you?
The breathing with the earth exercise. That one's a wonderful practice for finding that sense of grounding and stability.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
It's something you can do anytime, anywhere, to just reconnect with your body in the present moment.
I've been trying that one too. And I love that imagery of sinking into the earth with each exhale.
It's powerful.
Really helps me release tension and reconnect with a sense of support and solidity.
And the scan for emotions exercise, that's a powerful one too, for developing a deeper understanding of our emotional landscape.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating to explore those background emotions.
Yeah, but ones that are lurking beneath the surface.
Right,
It's
exactly.
like peeling back the layers of an onion, you uncover so much complexity, you start to see those subtle nuances that are often driving our behavior. It makes me think that journaling could be a really valuable practice to process those insights from the scan for emotions exercise.
Oh, for sure.
Putting pen to paper can make those aha moments more concrete.
It can, I agree.
So if someone were to take just one thing away from this deep dive, what would you suggest it be?
Start small. Begin with just a few minutes of mind breathing each day. Notice your breath as it flows in and out. Just observe any thoughts or emotions that arise without judgment.
It's like creating a little sanctuary of peace amidst the busyness of life. And as you become more comfortable with that, you can start to weave mindfulness into other areas of your life, like eating or walking, or even just having conversations.
Exactly. And remember, this is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, I love that.
There's no need for perfection. Approach it with curiosity and compassion.
This audiobook has been a real treasure trove of insights and practices. I so appreciate you joining me to explore it. And for our listener, I encourage you to continue exploring the world of mindfulness. There are so many resources available, books, apps, guided meditations,
It's true.
all waiting to be discovered.
And remember, even just a few minutes of mindfulness each day can make a world of difference. Start small, be patient with yourself, and just see where this path of mindfulness leads you.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into mindfulness and emotions. Until next time.